As I go through each of these 5 principles, I want you to go into the chat and share which one's resonating with you most and why. The first principle is brevity creates confusion. The pressure to communicate quickly can lead many of us into taking shortcuts, sometimes leaving out context altogether. I'll share a story from one of my clients. Adriel's a leader of a team. She sends a no subject calendar invitation to her teammate, Brian, for a meeting the next morning to talk about a client. Brian thinks he's about to get fired. There had been budget cuts recently, and he was reading between the lines, and he doesn't sleep all night. He gets on the call. He looks exhausted. Adriel says, I want to talk about the client. Brian admits that he thought he was about to get fired. And while this story may seem a little astronomical, the honest truth is that we can never confuse a brief with a clear message. And as leaders today, our written communication matters more than ever. We don't just walk the talk, we write the talk. And so as we think about how we engage and connect, this is a critical skill, not only digitally in a remote or hybrid format, but even as we go back to the office. The second principle is to have a communicate your mind mindset. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that people can't read our minds, especially when behind a screen. Just similar to what I shared before, what you may write when someone is, or say when someone's happy or excited versus on the verge of tears face to face, you don't get those cues in a digital world. And so taking that extra step to make sure that you're clarifying, what is the ask? What is the priority level? Why do you and others need this? And how are you feeling about this? Are you grateful? Are you happy? And being explicit can go a long way. Because what was implicit in traditional body language, the head nod, the eye contact, the smile, the shrugged shoulders, the pursed lips, now has to be explicit in our digital body language. The third principle of digital body language is to hold your horses. Now, what do I mean by this? Less haste equals more speed. The pressure to go fast is often creating cultures of rushing over thoughtfulness. We are often rewarding the fastest person to respond to an email versus the most quality ideas, or perhaps the quickest person to jump in on a Zoom call versus an individual that may need some time to process and then share. One of my clients, Mary, has a process now where 48 hours before her team meetings, she sends an agenda, gives everyone time to review it. She asks specific questions that she'd like her team members to be ready to answer on the call. During the call, she asks everyone to go into the chat tool, like we're actively using today, and share their answers instead of speaking first. And then she calls on people with the most different or diverse ideas. This avoids groupthink. It captures on cognitive diversity in a call or even in a meeting in the new normal. And it also allows her introverts, especially, to process ideas and then share. She's also found that simple processes like this really avoid the notion that the first 3 people that speak often guide the rest of the agenda, and they're usually the extroverts or the most senior people. And so how can you make sure that you're truly holding your horses and you're prioritizing thoughtfulness over speed? The fourth principle of digital body language is to assume the best intent. Now, what do I mean by this? We all get messages like Tom's, like Greg's, like Jenny's, and maybe we don't always give others the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were rushing, maybe they thought it wouldn't offend us. Maybe Jenny's message wasn't as ominous as it sounds. It was just a meeting request. One of the most important things we have to do is role model good digital body language so that others can feel the same by assuming the best intent, checking if our interpretations were correct, know when to pick up the phone. I like to say picking up the phone is worth 1,000 emails, and switch the virtual medium when something isn't productive. If we're having 30-person video calls, maybe we have to have a one-on-one first, or there's a back and forth of 8 people on reply all. Knowing when to get on that phone call can make a lot of sense. And last but not least, my final principle of digital body language is what I like to call find your voice. Now, one of the things I think is so exciting about what our digital shift has unlocked is the varied ways that individuals can find their voice. In my new book, Digital Body Language, I actually talk specifically about how do you foster psychological safety in a hybrid world where we need to be able to connect with individuals anytime, anywhere, and also apply the fact that we are not all the same. And even our own digital body language style showed us in this Zoom room, we all have different styles. And so whether it's introvert, extrovert, generational, cultural, gender, there are differences, and we have to become conscious in new ways similar to the ways that we had to learn in the office.